Hi, welcome. Welcome to the first session of the Metabolism Makeover. This is Mary Brooks, and Tammy Marshall is also here. You'll mostly hear me talking tonight, but we're both really excited about you starting with us on this program. So tonight, this is session one of the Diet Freedom Academy. Tonight's session is called the Hormones, Metabolism, and Weight session. So first of all, let me just say welcome. I know that it is a big deal whenever you're trying to make a shift in your health, or you've been concerned about something and you decide to make that first step. That's a big deal. And also working with someone, that's a big deal also. So we're really honored that you've chosen to work with us, and we promise this is going to be pretty information and information packed. So we're going to jump right into that, but thank you. Okay, couple of housekeeping things I wanted to just cover since this is the first session. So there's 6 individual sessions that you signed up for. They'll always be held Tuesday nights at 7. And if you can't make one of those, we'll send you out the recording afterwards. We're always going to cover a topic in depth. And then we'll send you afterwards any relevant resources, and we'll also host a Q&A session on Fridays. So if you have questions, just keep note of them, because each time we give you information, we don't want to just leave you with the theory. We want to give you the tools and the tips and the information to start to incorporate this in your everyday lives. I would suggest that you create a folder on your desktop. You can call that Mary and Tammy. You can call it the Metabolism Makeover, but make sure you've got some place to stash all the information that you're getting from us, as well as anything else that you come across that you think would be helpful. You can keep it all in one place. Make sure you join the Facebook forum. That is the Diet Freedom Academy. And if you can't get into that, let us know and we'll get you in. This is a great time to start doing some journaling. So I would suggest that you keep a notebook or a journal just for this process. And, keep note of all your questions so that as they come up, we can address them in the forum. You can email us. You can do that in the Q&A session. But we want to make sure that it's working for you. I already covered that. If you can't make a session, we'll send it out in the replay. So be prepared to learn a lot. Everyone on this call is smart. And you wouldn't be here if you hadn't tried a lot of different things in terms of, your diet and your nutrition. I'm sure you've done a lot. But just be prepared and open to learning a new way of thinking about a lot of things. Because if you come in and you say, well, I'm paleo or I'm Atkins, you may not be as open to kind of all the new concepts. So I know I learned a lot, and there were things that I have been doing for a long time that didn't make sense to me. So I just suggest you be, willing to learn, and then also be prepared, because when you start to change things in one aspect of your life, a lot of other things will change. And that's kind of a cool thing. So I would expect that's going to happen for all of us. And also just be prepared to become, the CEO of your own health. We're here to help you. We're going to give you every single resource that we know of. But the person who's going to be most effective in making a change in your health is you. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm Mary Brooks. I have a master's in health education, and I'm also an integrated nutrition coach. So I got my degree at UVA many years ago, and I studied clinical-ish nutrition and exercise physiology. But what I would say about myself as a person is that, food has always been my passion. If I go to a new city, I'm going to be in the farmer's market. My idea of something fun to do is just to try a new food. I enjoy that. And the reason I think that matters is that, a lot of people who do nutrition have just, kind of consider it calories in, calories out, or don't really care about it. I do. So if there's something that you're really attached to that's like you really enjoy, know that, I come from that same attitude. My mom was Greek, so I grew up cooking. I don't want anybody to give up food entirely, but I also know, if you have an unhealthy attachment to it, that's not going to work. But I'm never going to be somebody who just doesn't get it, that we're all kind of attached to food in different ways. And so let me also explain to you my nutrition approach is much more from a functional perspective than a clinical perspective. So A clinical person thinks a calorie is a calorie, a food is a food. I look at it much differently. And I also believe in individuality, which means we're all really different. If our fingerprints are unique, we're not going to all like the same food. So, when you see a celebrity diet and a person has done something and it works for them, I really just cast that aside. That doesn't even register for me, because we're all so different in what foods work for us. There could be a great food like, coconut, but some person, it just doesn't work on their body. So until you get all that sorted out, it's not necessarily going to work. And that's kind of where I play detective and where I help people, make transitions that work for them. And if you look at the name of my business, it's called Sustainable Nutrition. And I chose that name because I don't want people to do things that aren't really doable for them for a long term. I don't want to see them dependent on a product. I want them to be well, and I want them to be doing things that, are enjoyable and long lasting. So I really try to stay away from, gimmicks and pills and powders. My attitude is I am, mostly coaching. I'm whole foods based, and I look at, products and supplements, as needed, but it's not my first line of defense. So a couple of quotes. This is James Califano, who's the former Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare. He says, "You, the individual, can do more for your health and well-being than any doctor, any drug, or any exotic medical device." So I really want you to stop and think for a moment that, you're really smart about your body. You know it better than anybody else. And when we get off balance, sometimes we're just not tuned in. But once you start to pay attention to the little signs and the cues, you'll start to really notice when something's not working for you. And when it is, you'll notice those improvements and you'll really feel better. So, that's not to say that I don't believe you don't ever need to go to the doctor. That's not the case at all. But I know that real healing takes place, in the body, in the mind, and you're so capable of doing so much more than, you probably realize. So another quote, this is a great book if you're ever looking for sort of a shot in the arm about, getting back on your true path and, doing what you are really destined to do. This book is called You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. So I love this quote, and I just want this for each of you. And sometimes when our health is not working well for us, it's sometimes the body's way of saying, hey, pay attention to me. And these little things that we have going on, for some of it's probably big and some of it's little. But whenever we listen, we're always going to come out much closer to, who we really want to be. So here's the quote. "You are perfect. To think anything less is as pointless as a river thinking that it's got too many curves, or that it moves too slowly, or that its rapids are too rapid. Says who? You're on a journey with no defined beginning, middle, or end. There are no wrong twists and turns. There is just being. And your job is to be as you can be. This is why you are here. To shy away from who you truly are would leave the world you-less. You are the only you that there is and will ever be. Do not deny the world its one and only chance to bask in your brilliance." All right, the reason this topic matters to me. So a little bit about me personally. I'm a wife and I'm a mom to 3 children. My oldest child is 22 and my youngest 2 are 19. So my personal style has always been, a little driven, not obsessive compulsive, but just, I push through, I plow through, I get obstacles out of my way. I like productivity. I like a challenge. I think there are times when I know this, that I go into this kind of hyper-focus mode when I'm working and I forget everything else. I just charge through. And, I think that's a good quality, but I can now see that it had some, outcomes in terms of my own health. So when my youngest 2 were about 2.5, I started to get back to back sinus infections that turned into bronchitis, that turned into pneumonia. And I remember a period of just being in the doctor all the time. And I would just sort of get my fix. I'd get a Z-Pack. I'd get sometimes an antibiotic shot. I'd get a steroid. And I'd go home and, feel better for a week, and then I would be sick again. And I suppose I should have asked the question, why is this happening to me? But when you're in the middle of something, you just, you do what you have to do. And I can remember, one time, getting a steroid shot and coming home and, feeling like I could play on the driveway with my kids, because that's what I wanted to do. But I really feel that probably really compromised my immunity, and I never had the tools to heal from that. I didn't know that I was clearly wiping out every bit of good bacteria in my body and setting myself up for probably, other kinds of health conditions. So in 2007, I realized, or I discovered, that I had some nodules on my thyroid, and I had cancer, and I had my thyroid removed. So I'm one of the people that will be using a thyroid medication for the rest of my life. The reason that matters is that even though I was seeing what I thought were the best people, available to me, an endocrinologist, an internist, nobody ever talked to me about how other things could affect my condition and how the thyroid worked and how the medication worked. So as I learned that stuff, as I say, the hard way, I was really kind of blown away by how many mistakes I was making that nobody pointed out to me. So that's why this topic means so much to me. And I really believe that some of the diet things that I was doing were pretty hazardous. I probably drank a lot of soy protein. I ate a low-fat diet. I still believe in exercise, but maybe the level at which I was exercising was making me more tired than I realized. And I didn't have any handbook for doing that. And that's why I do this, even though nutrition is my thing. I really want to give people that knowledge, because I see people who have low thyroid, who have adrenal fatigue, who have hormone imbalance, and they're not getting any satisfaction. Modern medicine did not help me at all. So I still obviously work very closely with many physicians, but I want to give the other piece of the puzzle that I think is so missing. So there's 3 integrated systems that we're going to talk about: the adrenals, hormones, and the thyroid. We typically take this very linear approach in medicine. Medicine is all set up according to systems of the body. Your throat hurts, you go to an ENT. But there's a lot more linkage between all of those systems. And if you only look at one, you're missing something. So that's why I want to take this session, and I want to talk about the 3 things that I think are working very closely for women, but are also usually kind of broken or thrown off course. And it's important to get them all working. So you can't just look at one and say, okay, if I do this one thing and I push this one easy button and I eat this one food, it's all going to work, because it doesn't work like that. And sometimes, for example, right now, somebody who's all paleo or only eating protein, you're missing major pieces of the equation. So I'd ask you to just sort of stop, don't look for the immediate single, solution. Ask how you got this way to begin with, not because it's a name and blame game, but because it helps. And we're all different. And when systems usually break down, there's a reason. So if we dig at those triggers and we dig at the why, we usually can really get to the bottom of it and get more relief. So we're going to make sense of your systems. What I like to say is that, we're going to treat the smoke, not the fire. When you're only just putting a medication in, or one food, or doing one thing, or saying it's all in your exercise, you're usually not really getting to the bottom of that. And then, some of what we've learned over the years, it's not often making us better, and sometimes it's making us worse. So you got to step back and look at really kind of, what's going on behind the scenes. So one more quote, I had a problem with this, because I like linear, I like outcomes, I like getting things done. And I have clients that feel that same way, but you've really got to be patient. So the quote is, adopt the path of nature, her secret is patience. So look at, the cycle of nature, winter, spring, summer, fall. It takes a while for growth to happen or change to happen. So be patient. I will tell you this though, when you start doing the right things, your body will change. Sometimes people can get symptom relief by really healing the body properly in 7 to 14 days. I've seen it happen time and time again. I've seen people years and years and years of something that they thought was never going to change. And when we put the right things in the body and we take the wrong things out, it's really pretty miraculous. So yeah, stay tuned for all of that, but just, be a little bit patient. Okay, some of the dieting myths that I think that I hear frequently, people think, their metabolism is broken, or they say, I've always had a slow metabolism. That's not really true. It's just that things are off. So those can totally be fixed. Another thing I hear is that, we make less hormones as we age. Well, yes and no, but a lot of what I see as menopausal symptoms and menopausal weight gain, those are really a function of adrenal issues and cortisol, which don't really get talked about because I guess there's not a medication for it. But I want you to realize that that's not really true. Also that, when we're lacking in something, then we just need more of. We need more hormones, more thyroid, more sleep medications. We need an antidepressant. Not always, that's not to say that those things don't help people, because I know that they do, and they give people relief. But what I see is that unless we go underneath, we don't ever really fix the problem. And a lot of times, other problems crop up that are just smaller versions of the same problem coming out in a different way. One thing that I completely disagree with is that, we just need to eat less and exercise harder. Those are sort of formulas for disaster, and I can tell you why. That doesn't mean that some of us don't need to eat less and exercise a little more, but that's not the only way. And sometimes, like I said, it can create kind of a fiasco. So for thyroid, the only way to treat low thyroid is with medication or more medication, not necessarily. I think a lot of people, when they go to the doctor, they just feel like, oh, there's nothing I can do and I just have to live with myself. I don't agree with that. And right now, there's always a diet trend of the day. And right now it's all the packaged shake programs that are, based on this slug of things that are in a protein mix with all your vitamins in there. That's not really true at all. Some of that's the trickle down of the bodybuilding or the CrossFitters who are, using or trying to build a lot of muscle, but that doesn't really apply to the typical population. And if you look at the quality of that protein, many of them are just not very good at all. And so, while you need protein, the source is really critical. And so I'm here to sort of bust through some of those myths for you. Okay, so let's talk about the system. So we're going to start with the adrenal system. The HPA axis is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal system, and these work together. They're connected between your brain and your hormones. So let's talk about how they all work. So your hypothalamus, which is in your brain, sends messages to your adrenals. So this is the starting point of the axis. It is responsible for your circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm is what gets you up in the morning, has you alert during the day, and then getting, tired in the evening and going to sleep. When someone's circadian rhythm is off, there was just a study in the New York Times that said that, people with that, have a lot of difficulty losing weight because their cortisol is out of sync. So that's what's regulated there, and your body temperature and your energy levels. So your hypothalamus connects with your pituitary gland, which is at the base of your brain. And that helps you produce things like your growth hormone, your antidiuretic hormone. So different functions that need to be, sent out to your body. And then those are signaled to your adrenals. And your adrenals sit right on top of your kidneys. And they produce more hormones than any other gland. They produce your steroids, your sex hormones, your stress hormones. So those are very key to your well-being. So what do the adrenals do? They produce over 50 hormones. They drive every bodily function. They're essential for life. They moderate our stress response, and they help us respond in a crisis. So, the classic thing is, you talk about the saber-toothed tiger, biologically, what did we do when we had a crisis? We don't just sit there. We know how to respond. And so it's your adrenals that get that, cortisol pumping through your body. You know that feeling when your palms sweat and your mouth gets dry and you're ready to run and, and take care of business or do whatever you need to do in a crisis. And there's two parts of it. There's the cortex that makes the hormones, and then there's the medulla that also produces hormones, but they're considered the non-essential hormones. So this is where, the light should start to go off, because when we're in a crisis, we can only do so many things. And what we do is we divert our energy towards one thing, and we take our energy away from the non-essential things that are things like digestion and repair. All right, so here's the signs of adrenal dysfunction. I picked the little sleepy puppy because he looked like he was all wiped out. So these are typical signs. Body aches, trouble concentrating, racing thoughts, moodiness and irritability, always tired, feeling overwhelmed, cravings for salt, fat, and sugar, weight gain in the middle, and then this is kind of classic. We talk about this a lot. This tired but wired feeling. I have plenty of clients who tell me, nope, I have no trouble. I put my head on the pillow, I fall right asleep, which is great because sleep is really important. But when you're somebody who feels rotten all day, and then 6, 7 o'clock, you feel this like boost of energy, and then you try to go to sleep and you can't sleep, that's adrenal fatigue. So the good news is about that is that if you recognize those symptoms, you can start to begin to not only recognize them, but know what you can do to settle that down. So signs of imbalance, and I get this a lot, and you typically if you go to a physician, our only source of fixing them is a medication. And, the more I work with people, the more people are starting to say, I don't want something else. I had my own experience with that. I recognized some of this in myself, and I just knew that if I kept going at the pace I was going, I would just be this person walking around with, a whole Ziploc bag full of medications. And so that's kind of what caused me to start to dig a little bit further for myself. But these are typical, fatigue, depression, headaches, hormone imbalance, the brain fog, that's huge. I mean, I see so many people struggling with memory, and, even, I think, we'll talk about leaky gut, but I think leaky brain is really the next thing where, so many of our foods are really affecting our health and are factoring into things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So, again, I think it's so important that you're here, because everything that you learn, you can apply to yourself, you can apply to your family, but don't apply it to your family yet. Apply it to yourself first. So skin issues like acne, midsection weight gain, and I'll explain to you exactly why that happens. Everyone's like, what's the muffin top about? There's a reason, and I can explain it to you. So your immune system gets suppressed. That was probably what was happening to me. Autoimmune disorders, almost all autoimmune conditions have a root in the gut, and the gut factors in heavily into adrenal fatigue. So we'll connect all of those. Increased PMS and menopause symptoms, decreased ability to handle stress. I know kind of at my lowest point, I remember, something that was really kind of minor, and my reaction to it was just so off. And when I, had my thyroid checked, that was when it was at its absolute lowest. So, that's a sign. It's not just you're a weak and emotional person. It means your body needs support. Feeling tired after a full night's sleep, or, having this afternoon energy crash. I call this carb o'clock. This is one of my phrases that I've made up, where you just start wanting to, kill for a coffee or a latte or a candy bar. These people in offices that have the candy jar, everybody just comes out at 4 o'clock because they're like, give me the sugar. And it's because their adrenals are weak and they need that support. But, things like that actually rob us of our energy. So I'm going to teach you how to, reverse that cycle. So here's the things that can weaken your adrenals. And next session, we're going to talk a lot about mindset and emotions and triggers. But things like anxiety, fear, anger, guilt, depression, they really, they take a systemic toll. That's not something that we just make up. There's actually a physiology to that. Overwork, and we're doing this today. We're working longer hours. We're not taking breaks. We're not taking vacations. Those have a physical cost. Excessive exercise. I've got some friends that do triathlons and do marathons, and almost all of them start to develop physical issues and sort of, breakdown. And they think that that's all structural, but a lot of it is that it's creating oxidative stress, and their body can't keep up with that. And so it taxes some of these critical systems. Light cycle disruption. We're going to talk about sleep, but all of this business of us, working at different hours, staying up late, being on electronics, being exposed to blue light, that really has a major outcome in terms of our whole wellness. So other things: surgery, trauma, infection, illness, pain, extreme temperatures, toxic exposure, and nutritional deficiencies. So what's a healthy adrenal response? We need to, and our bodies are, again, very well designed. That biological response is a very primitive response to, what do you do in a crisis? We're not like that, or we're not designed to be like that, all the time. But when we need to react, we can. We have this rush of cortisol, our heart rate goes up, our blood flow goes up. We have this surge of energy, which is great. The body is well designed to do that. But when that is happening, I mentioned this earlier, we modulate or dampen essential functions of our body, which is digestion, immunity, and inflammation. So here's the deal, and this is what's happening to us. We live in a world where stress has become the norm. We glorify busy. I don't know anybody, whenever I ask them, how are you doing? Well, I'm so busy. I know people that, will multitask and multitask and multitask, which, I've realized that, this stage of my life, I'm not very good at that. I'm a single tasker. I do better at that. I try to give people, my undivided attention, but I get it. We're all on demand. I have friends that, they have little kids and they have big kids. They have little kids and big kids in a job. They have little kids, big kids, a job, and their parent isn't well. So I'm not saying that we can live in a non-stressful world, but we don't really have the systems in place to relieve that stress. And so, what happens in chronic low-level stress is that our bodies weren't meant to handle that. They were meant for these short, bouts or bursts of stress, and then they can repair. And so I like to use this analogy of, if your body is being protected by, firefighters, well, the firefighters should go do their job, and then they go home and they clean their fire engine and they put their hoses away and they eat a good meal and they rest. But in our case, those firefighters are out on the job all the time. And when you're like that, it sets up massive inflammation in your body. And inflammation creates hormone imbalance, thyroid disrepair, and it stresses your adrenals. So other things to just be aware, the technology, burden that we're putting on ourselves. I think a lot of us have difficulty saying no. Other things that can be, physical stresses, your job can be physical. A lot of people are just walking into environments every day that are stressful. If you go through, a death of a family member, a divorce, things like relationships and parenting. I think parenting is very stressful. It's important to say too that happy stress can be take its toll on you. Having a baby, getting married, moving, which is something that I did. It was a good thing, but it was stressful. Internal thinking. I think this is huge. How we talk to ourselves, our beliefs. If you take yourself too seriously and you don't have some fun and some happy and some laughter in your day, that can create chronic, systemic, low-level stress. And, if you're in a place where you're not happy with your health or your body, and you're always thinking about that, that really takes its toll on you. And other things that are, prolonged, financial conflict, emotional conflict. I know people that, have unresolved things with people that go back years and years. So this is a prompt to start working on those things, because as we get older, we're not as resilient, and they take their toll on us. All right, so we're going to move over to the thyroid gland. So that's a picture of it. It sits right at the base of your throat, right above your vocal cords, and it's like a little butterfly-shaped gland. So right now, there is pretty much an epidemic of thyroid disease in the US. 27 million people have a thyroid disorder, and 13 million are undiagnosed. Women are 5 to 8 times more likely to develop this condition. The thyroid medications, Synthroid and all their various forms, are the 6th most highly prescribed medication. And thyroid is poorly treated, and even when it is, what I see is that most people have not a whole lot of improvement in their symptoms. They're still having issues. And then also low thyroid, about 8 to 9 out of 10 people have the autoimmune component, which is called Hashimoto's, and we can talk more about that. So this is how the thyroid communicates throughout the body. So the hypothalamus in the brain is where the communication starts, and that produces TRH, and it signals the pituitary gland to make TSH. If you go to the doctor and they check your thyroid, chances are they check your TSH, which if you see what's going on next, you'll understand why I believe that's kind of inadequate. So then the thyroid releases two compounds. It's T3 and T4. You produce both forms, and but T4 converts to T3, and T3 is what goes into your cells. Some of the T4 crosses the blood-brain barrier, so you do need both. And then the conversion takes place in the liver, the kidneys, and the brain. You have a receptor for thyroid on every single cell in your body. And this is your master metabolism manager. It's going to affect everything from your temperature, your synthesis of protein and fats, how you're making skin, hair. Dry skin is a huge indicator of low thyroid. Hair falling out, huge indicator. And also temperature regulation. So a lot of people with low thyroid will say like they're always cold all the time, or they're sensitive to cold. So here's, your aha moment. So if you can look at these two systems working together at the same time, when your cortisol is high, your body can only do so much. So it communicates to your thyroid and tells you basically, slow down. I need you to make less. And it has you produce less thyroid. So again, now that you're kind of seeing why I'm connecting those two systems. So we talked about this a little bit more. Yeah, we've already covered that. Okay, so testing, not guessing. It's important for you, and I can help you with this, but if you suspect that you have a thyroid condition, and you may not, I'm not trying to, push everybody to thinking they have one, but it's either something you want to rule out, or you want to know, okay, this is something that I need to address. Tests that you want to get. So there's something called a 24-hour diurnal cortisol test, and you measure that with saliva. It's a spit test, and you measure it 4 times a day. You don't want to ever do a blood test. And if your doctor doesn't offer that, I can tell you how to get it on your own and where you can send it for interpretation. In terms of your thyroid, you want to get your TSH. There are 2 types of antibodies, and what that means is that if you have those antibodies, your body is essentially launching an attack, and it's attacking at the level of your thyroid. So you want to look for those antibodies, and then you also want to see how much free T3, free T4, and reverse T3. Reverse T3 is when the thyroid is not getting into the cells, it's basically just sitting there. And we want to know if that's happening, because that means something's going on and the receptor site is being blocked. And then vitamin D, and I thought that so strongly, I typed it twice. And you also want to look at your iron. So you want to work with a physician that will help you look at all those results. And you want to look for, not just okay, but optimal. I think it's really important to advocate for yourself. And, some of the thyroid guidelines are a little bit outdated. When they were first developed, they included elderly people. So I think now they're modifying the range, but it's not that great. And it's also important, like this is what I say, you need to treat the person, not the paper. So if the person is still having symptoms, you gotta dig a little bit deeper. Okay, so what does the autoimmune part mean? So if you simply have a thyroid condition and you're only taking medication, but you have Hashimoto's or the low thyroid symptoms, you want to make sure that you're addressing the lifestyle components, because that's what caused the autoimmunity to begin with. So an autoimmune condition is when the body doesn't distinguish between itself and an invader. So T helper cells stimulate B cells, and B cells are making antibodies that attack the thyroid gland. So I'll give you an example of this. I've got a client right now. She just had part of her thyroid removed. And the reason why she's working with me is that unless we figure out what else is going on, her thyroid will continue to get attacked. Also, it's very common if you have one autoimmune condition, you typically will develop another. So again, you got to dig for the root. And here's just some other autoimmune. They're all the same, but they just attack different systems. So rheumatoid arthritis attacks the joints. MS attacks the nerve cells. IBS attacks the intestinal lining. Psoriasis is the skin. Other things that are very commonly autoimmune but not recognized are asthma, allergies, acne, things like Crohn's and colitis. So how do we develop an autoimmune condition? I call this the perfect storm. We may have a genetic predisposition, but if you know anything about epigenetics, that's the science of genetics, just because you have a genetic predisposition does not mean you're going to get what your mom had or your aunt had. It's just a matter of whether the gene is getting turned on or turned off. You may have been exposed to an antigen or a trigger, and you may have intestinal permeability. And for almost all of us, given the world that we live in, most of us have some type of leaky gut, gut dysbiosis, or intestinal permeability. So it's really important to address those. All right, so when we talked about this conversion of T4 to T3, if you simply have enough TSH, but the thyroid is not being converted, there's usually a reason in the body. Something's interfering with that. So things that interfere with it are nutrient depletions. One of the most common ways that we get depleted is by taking over-the-counter medications, things like antacids, antibiotics, steroids, and also over-the-counter pain medications like Advil and Tylenol. So other things: stress, aging, alcohol, obesity, smoking, diabetes, fasting, which is why I'm not a fan of fasting. Soy, I'm not a fan of soy at all for women. Medications, goitrogens are a type of vegetable. They are the cabbagey, cruciferous vegetables. For some people with thyroid, if they eat too much of those can be a factor. Pesticides. So, we're really starting to realize, we're ingesting pesticides in our food. So, finding organic foods. I used to not really understand why you needed to get organics, but we're really ingesting this level of pesticides that's not good for us at all. Radiation, surgery, heavy metals, low progesterone, and fluoride. One of those things I did not know. If you have low thyroid in particular, using fluoride water and fluoride toothpaste is not a good idea. So I know we were all raised with the idea that that was great for us, but things change. Okay, so what does this have to do with your hormones? There's something that we call a pregnenolone steal. So pregnenolone is the precursor to all your hormones. Your hormones are formed by, you need cholesterol, first of all, to make hormones. And the pregnenolone turns into both your sex hormones, your thyroid, your testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and your stress hormones. So in a stressful situation, your body will always favor forming cortisol instead of your other hormones. So that is why it's so important to sort of moderate your cortisol and your stress. I think that it's just so interesting to realize that, you know, we live in this modern world where we're stressed out all the time and we don't have ways to soothe our system, but that high cortisol is actually causing the disruption in our hormones. So also, again, sort of a myth that we all bought into was, you know, eating no fat and low fat foods, but that's really might be a great weight loss strategy, but it's not very good for your hormone production. So you need good sources of fat, and those are things like chia, flax, walnuts, fatty fish. It is not the Krispy Kreme donut or the funnel cake at the fair, but you do need sources of fat. So what are your common triggers? What are the things that are aggravating your adrenals and your thyroid? So things like caffeine, sugar. Sugar actually suppresses your immune system. So if you're looking for a reason to break up with sugar, especially right before, you know, what we call the cold and flu season, which I don't really believe in, but I think it's, you know, our sugar, you know, we tend to eat more sweets when it's cold, and then we say, well, it's because it's all the germs outside, but really it's because we frequently get outside less and we consume, you know, bad foods more. So other things, artificial sweeteners, processed food, prepared microwave food. There's really no good prepared microwave foods. Hydrogenated oils, those are corn, peanut, sunflower, safflower, soy in all of its forms, except for fermented soy. And I can explain that to you. And then the big baddie, gluten. You know, not all of us are ready to go gluten-free, but many people realize it's not something that they tolerate very well. And gluten produces a protein called zonulin, and zonulin has actually been shown to break down your gut lining. So we want to take a look at that. All right, so what can we do about all of this? So the good news is you really can do things about it. You can reduce your triggers. You can get on top of this intestinal permeability, because, you know, we're all going to eat things and come in contact with things that aren't good for us. We know that. The key to it is a gut that has good integrity, that can withstand that, that's not compromised. And again, if you've got inflammation in your body and your gut is leaky, you can't fight all these other things off. So you can't repair as well as you need to. And then your body needs nutrients. You know, I sometimes say we make illness and health and nutrition very, very complicated. We all have all these different labels and names, and I just went through all of that. But it's very, very simple. You know, you put the good nutrients in and you get the toxins out, and the body will regenerate. All right, foods that support your adrenals and your thyroid. Coconut in all forms, coconut milk, coconut meat, coconut water, coconut flakes, all amazing for the body. Coconut oil is fabulous. I have my clients eating a teaspoon of it a day. Olives in all their forms, avocado, you can do whole avocado, you can do guacamole, you can do avocado oil. The cruciferous vegetables, some of us may need to steam them. Fatty fish is amazing. Meats are good. It's very hard to be vegan and produce the right amount of hormones. What you want are hormone-free, steroid-free meat. So chicken, turkey, beef, eggs. So again, think about why, if you look at your gut, if your gut is disrupted by hormones and steroids, if you're consuming them in your food, you got trouble. So that's why it's so important to eat foods that are not, processed and not treated with hormones and antibiotics. Nuts are very good, especially Brazil nuts, all greens, all veggies, all fruits, foods that are high in omegas like walnuts, pumpkin seeds, flax, chia, sunflower. Kelp and seaweed are amazing because these sea vegetables have the minerals that we need. Our foods right now are depleted in minerals, and when you are under stress, you dump your minerals out of your body. You start flushing them into your kidneys and excreting them at a higher level. So you need to replace those. We talked in the promo about Himalayan sea salt, which has very, very good minerals, and that's a great thing to add to your foods. And then a breakfast that is high in protein, fats, and greens. So in the morning, you have this cortisol awakening response. That's when your cortisol goes up. So if it's rising and you don't put anything in to help it, steady itself out and steady out your blood sugar, you set yourself up for problems. If I didn't mention it already, so when your cortisol rises, it affects your blood sugar and it mobilizes fats differently in your body. And you have receptor cells on the fat that's in your belly that is higher than any other place in your body. So as your cortisol is rising, it's going to communicate with those fat cells and mobilize fat cells in your belly. So there's that connection between your cortisol and belly fat. So you got to nix the cortisol to not have that constant feedback loop going on. Okay, and then huge topic, intestinal permeability. This is what we need. So, we live in this world of, antibiotics. I gave them to my kids a little more than I think that I should have, looking back. I took them myself. One course of an antibiotic wipes out your healthy bacteria. So then think about the fact that we've been eating foods full of antibiotics and steroids and hormones, right? So we need something to put that good bacteria back. And I'm going to suggest for everybody, and I suggest it to all my clients, a probiotic. You can't fix it all with that, but that's an important part of it. If you have gut issues, if you're bloated, if you're not feeling good when you're eating a meal, that's a sign that your body is not breaking down the food correctly. So a digestive enzyme basically makes your food more digestible, and that can be really important. And then prebiotics, that's keeping that gut, constantly fueled with the good and the bacteria that we need. Those you need from greens, veggies, and fruit, and you need them every single day. The simplest forms, and there's more than one way. If you don't like something, it's okay. We can get them into you a different way. But juices, smoothies, soups, roasted vegetables, salads, stir fries, that is the best nutritional therapy you can get. Think if you hold a plant up to the light, a leaf of a plant, and you look at that vascularity, that is the same thing you have in your body, in your lungs, in your veins. So plants, grasses, greens, veggies, fruits, those cells from a live plant are the most effective thing at healing your gut and healing your body, reducing inflammation, reducing oxidative stress. The plant is the thing. Other things that you can add, aloe is a natural plant that has a healing capacity and it can heal your gut. Tart cherry is a natural product and it has a very high ORAC value, which reduces damage and cellular damage in the body, and that's something that you can drink every night. And if you're someone who will not eat greens, I've got some friends like that, we can look at a green supplement for you. I still want you getting it through food because, if you look at what's in a food, it's got micronutrients, macronutrients. It's good to get it all. But if you are going to eat a green, not a vitamin, you can get a whole foods green that has those same products. It's just dehydrated so that you get like all the nutrients. And then most of us would benefit from magnesium, vitamin D, and then adding the pink sea salt. And then one last thing, I'm going to give you a recipe, bone broth, made from stock. That's the bones of the animal, like chicken stock or beef broth, has a lot of things that really help the gut heal. And those are collagen and minerals. So, back in the day when we used to make soup the right way, that is very, very healing. And I'm going to give you a recipe for that. All right, and so none of this really works if your stress is still off the charts. I have stress, we all do, but we have to work proactively on managing that. So the brain and its thoughts are really the most powerful tool that you have. Next session, we're going to talk about mindset. If you're stuck, if you believe, well, I've always been like this, or everyone in my family is like this, we got to break that cycle of thinking, and we can. Your brain starts to believe and it fires and wires on the same thing. And that's why many of us, even though we have good intentions and we want to change, we get in this cycle. We do the same thing over and over and over again. So that's using the unconscious mind, and we're going to tap into that. A regular spiritual practice helps: prayer, meditation, journaling, yoga. Physical activity is huge. Without that, you have detoxification pathways in your body, natural systems that move garbage and toxicity out of your body. But exercise is a great way to tap into that, because you move things out by elimination, you pee, poop, through your sweat and through breathing. So exercise really helps with that. Being outdoors in nature really helps. Learning where you're stuck, finding these places where we tell old stories to ourselves and we tell them over and over, and moving those out. We all know that stuff isn't good for us, but some of us, we haven't reconciled with that. So it's a good time to bring that up. And, it's all part of the process, and it's okay if you've done that for a while, but we can help you with that. Dealing with trauma, forgiveness, negativity, energy vampires. I tell this story, when I first did my first food detox, I realized that a couple of people in my life that were just not healthy for me. And so I detoxed some relationships. It's not a bad thing to do occasionally. Also, laughter, having fun, not taking yourself too seriously. All right, so that we are to the end. I know that was a long time of listening to me talk, but here's our homework for next week, or from now until next week. See if you can make a connection to when and how you got imbalanced. I know what mine are, and I've helped other clients dig at those, because when we do, we may figure out that there's something that we really can, unearth, soothe, solve, and move out of the way so that you can heal. Look at the trigger list. I put those on the Facebook forum, so see what you can eliminate. Begin your day with a high protein, good fat greens breakfast. Add the probiotic and the digestive enzyme in the bone broth. See if you can have some fun daily, and get support. Feeling crappy sucks. Feeling alone and crappy is worse. So get some support. Ask your family if you're making shifts and changes. Ask them to support you. It's not fun to do that alone. And talk with someone about what you want to work on and ask for support. So that is it, guys. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We'll be following up with you. We'll do the Q&A session. We'll post things on Facebook. There's a member site where all of our information is, so get to that. And have a great night, and we will talk to you soon.